It's train time on Travels with Bill. This time around, we're in the middle of winter. Well, actually, it's early spring, but there's still plenty of snow around, and we're catching up with CN 2801 as it makes its way west from the Swan River Valley towards Canora, Saskatchewan, and then to points further. We'll watch the whole train from a level crossing in a minute, but first let's learn a little bit about the route and the train itself. Today's train, well, it looks like it's going slow, but it's actually traveling full speed. The speed limit for this particular train is 10 miles per hour. The reason for the delay? Well, it's a very lengthy train, 8,900 feet. Starts out as a unit train of grain, then we've got another locomotive, and at the end we've got a week's worth of production from the LP factory by Minitonas, Manitoba. You see a train like this about every week, maybe 2 weeks, on the Priestville subdivision. That's the subdivision that goes from Thunderhill Junction, just a mile or so south of Swan River, all the way to Priestville, Saskatchewan. This train will never make it to Priestville, though. It will turn off at Sturgis and start going up towards Canora. The first part of the train was loaded here at the Pioneer Elevator. This is just north of Swan River, and that'll be one of the final trains loaded on this old ladder track. It's been here many years, but it will be replaced later this summer when they switch over to the new elevator. Well, the new elevator isn't going to use a ladder track anymore. It will use a ring track, one of those big loops where the whole train fits in a circle. So this will all disappear, and of course you can see the new elevator on the left side, still well and truly under construction. The back end of the train was loaded at Louisiana Pacific near Minitonas. Here's a video, or at least a part of the video, from our LP series. You can find the whole episode on the channel to find out how this all works and why they're moving those cars around, plus just how much board they make here. In fact, we also have videos about that elevator construction. Very worth checking them out as well. Getting back to today's train, check out all the snow on top of some of the grain cars. Obviously still winter, and these cars have been stored someplace where there was a lot of snow. Must not have been the elevator though, because lots of the cars have none. I wonder if it came in like that when they were empty from wherever they've been before. Jump towards the end of the train here, we see that spare locomotive coming along as it helps push the train along, and then behind it, you see that LP product. That, of course, smart siding made at that plant just down the line from here. If you're into chasing trains, this is a pretty easy spot to chase them. These big trains always go slow on this particular line, so it takes hours. In fact, we set out a couple hours after this train left Swan River, and we caught up with it just over an hour drive from Swan because it's going so incredibly slow. You could certainly spend the entire day chasing it around, and one day we may do that in the summertime and get some nice views of this particular subdivision. Check out the shadows on the ground. I count 1, 2, 3 people standing there. Well, one's me with the camera, but then again, who are those other 2 people? Well, it's actually the train crew. Now, we're not going to point the camera right at them because they're a little bit shy, but you can certainly see their shadows there. Why is the train crew on the ground here with me instead of on their train as it gets away? That's part of the interesting thing. This is a very special crossing. You see, for 2 miles to the west and 2 miles to the east, there isn't a crossing. And the length of line from Swan River to Canora is a little over 80 miles. That's further than you can go with the train without stopping to inspect it. So the only good spot there is to stop and inspect the train as it goes by is this particular crossing. So the train pulls up here and stops. The crew members get off. Well, not all of them. Obviously, the engineer stays on. And then they're going to watch the train go by. That's what we're doing here together, is watching the train. And, well, we're kind of having a long discussion about what a nice train it is. That's how we know it's 8,900 feet long, is because they have it all measured out. Once the train goes by, it'll stop. They'll have to go to the other side of the track, and then the train's going to back up so they can inspect the other side. When that's done, they'll get back on and off they go. We'll show you how that process works before we get to watching the whole train go by at a slightly different crossing. Now, the crew says they're really hopeful they're going to install a detector here soon because of that new elevator being built. And they figure when that new elevator's in, the trains will be even bigger and maybe even a little more frequent. So they'd like the detector installed so they don't have to do this step. As you can imagine, when you're only traveling 10 miles an hour to begin with, it takes quite a while to get off, drive it by, back it up, get on, and go by again. See how the train's slowing down? Well, we're almost to the end here, and if you listen really closely, you might even hear them talking to the engineer, telling him how many more car lengths to go. It's pretty critical that they go far enough, because they have to walk across this crossing to get to the other side, so if the train doesn't get all the way out of the way, well, as you can imagine, that would be unfortunate for the getting across part, wouldn't it? Now you're saying to yourself, why is it a big deal that there's no crossings? Well, you see, if there was a crossing someplace behind us, they would have to also be at that crossing because the train would back across it without someone there to watch it. So it would make things a whole lot more complicated. Having enough space behind us here means that they don't have to worry about protecting another crossing manually. Because in this part of the world, obviously the crossings don't have bells or arms or anything like that. There's simple crossbucks on the ground, just making sure you know there's a train track there. Well, here comes that final car of our big, long train. It's going to slowly work itself across, and then we will see them go to the other side. Seeing how we have a moment, let me remind you, you should be subscribing to Travels with Bill. We go all sorts of interesting places, and we show a lot of trains too. So if you have a friend that likes trains, well, tell them to subscribe as well. When you do subscribe, you'll of course get a chance to see the most recent episodes as they come out, and you won't miss a single train at all. There's the fret on the end. In fact, you can hear it whistling a little bit too. That's the air spinning the little generator in it to make sure it has some electricity. There they go to the other side of the crossing as the train comes to a complete stop. You can see him already on his radio there saying it's now time to start backing that train up. Well, if we stayed here long enough, we would see the entire train over again. Why isn't it backing up already? Well, it's probably already stopped at the far end, but it just compresses those knuckles together a little bit, and then the engine will start backing up. And in a moment here, oh, there it goes. This train starts going back right where it came from. It's now heading to the east, back towards Swan River. The entire train's going to come back across here. Then they'll get back on, and off they go. Kind of a cool process, though, to know this happens out in the middle of the country. If you know where this crossing is and you know there's a train coming, this would be a perfect spot to go for train watching. It has to show itself to you not once, not twice, but 3 times right at this crossing. I'll spare you watching the whole train go back across. Here we are from the air again, watching just the head end really of 2801 backing up across that crossing. They're just finishing inspecting the second side of the train, and as it gets to the actual crossing here, if you watch closely, you'll see the crew hop on the train, go in the nose of the cab, and then the train will be off again. We are just moments away from watching the whole train go by properly, because I know you came to see the train. But I do hope you enjoy seeing just how they inspect this as well, and knowing that a big train like this stops out in the middle of the countryside. If you're really into trains, you'll find a lot more episodes of trains on Travels with Bill. In fact, the 2021 Train Week is available. It was 7 days of trains, and it was amazing. There's some history of trains, some fast trains, some slow trains, and even some trains that feel a little bit more like an earthquake. Do search that up because you'll enjoy seeing them all. Well, 2801's going to get going again. They've got many hours ahead of them because there's still many miles to go from Canora. Once they get to Canora, things will go a little faster for them. They'll keep heading on down through Yorkton and then to the CN main line. They'll join that at Melville. At some point, the grain's going to split up from the LP materials and start going its own separate directions. And that'll be the end of 2801, I suppose. And it'll become some different trains until, well, it returns a little bit later on to our area. That does it for the talky part of the episode. We'll let you get on with enjoying seeing CN 2801 roll on by as it passes us at yet another level crossing. Farewell for now from Erin, Saskatchewan.